in economic activity around the world is set to continue for some time. Solange Moujon is here with us from our business desk. Solange, this downturn then, it means that there's an increased risk of hunger and poverty. Tell us more about that warning.
Yeah, that's right, Sharon. This downturn could hurt low-income countries the most. Ahead of its spring meeting with the World Bank, the IMF made a sobering announcement about global growth. It predicts that it will stay at around 3% for the next 5 years. This is the lowest forecast in over 3 decades, or since 1990. And it is well below the average of 3.8% that we have all been living with over the past 2 decades. Now, why has there been a drop and why is it expected to continue? Well, it's largely due to soaring inflation across the globe and to supply issues from the war in Ukraine. According to the IMF, roughly 15% of low-income countries are in debt distress. As rich countries tighten their belts on imports and on spending, poor manufacturing countries, well, they're feeling the drop.
And we are going to see in low-income countries higher borrowing costs coming at the time of weakening demand for their exports.
Now, the French President Emmanuel Macron is in China, accompanied by some 50 business leaders, including the CEO of Airbus. The European plane giant signed an agreement to open a second assembly line at its factory in Tianjin. Now, unlike its rival Boeing, its American rival Boeing, which assembles all of its civilian jets in the United States, Airbus has 4 sites worldwide for its A320 planes. And now this deal could double Airbus's production capacity in China. And it will help Airbus increase its global monthly output from last year's 45 planes to 75 planes expected in 2026. Now, China used to split its aircraft purchases between Airbus and Boeing, but deals with the U.S. plane giant have slowed amid tension with Washington. The U.S. has been encouraging Europe to isolate China amid these tensions, but Macron has sought to maintain strong economic ties, something that Xi Jinping praised at their meeting.
President Macron and I jointly witnessed the signing of a series of important cooperation agreements. The two sides will deepen cooperation in traditional areas such as aviation, aerospace, and civil nuclear energy, and cultivate new growth drivers in cooperation such as green development and scientific technological innovation, including building a China-France carbon neutrality center and strengthening joint training of talents.
Now, Emmanuel Macron and Xi Jinping also signed several energy deals vowing to further cooperate on nuclear and on wind energy. Now, in regard to nuclear energy, here in France, the National Assembly has issued a scathing report, it did so yesterday, on France's policies over the past 30 years. France's production is currently at a 3-decade low. It produced 450 terawatts in 2005. Last year, it was at 279 terawatts per hour. Now, why has there been such a drop? Well, this is where the report becomes highly critical of French policies. It says that France has been, quote, reckless and inconsistent in its policies, noting that under François Hollande's government, it dropped nuclear energy to 50% of France's mix. This was after the Fukushima disaster, but it did not compensate enough, the report says, by increasing renewables. Now, this drop comes as demand in energy is increasing and is expected to further increase because of electric cars. The report says that by 2050, the nation will need France will need between 650 and 750 terawatts per hour. Finally, the report concludes that there needs to be a massive increase in nuclear energy. The report, it is important to say, is rather pro-nuclear. And it also says we need to increase renewable energy. Finally, it also concludes that the nation needs to cut down on how much energy it uses. Now for the markets. Asian markets have been going in the same direction as Wall Street did yesterday. They're going up slightly. This is as hopes are growing that the U.S. Federal Reserve will not raise interest rates as the American economy is showing signs of slowing down. Hong Kong, as we see there, but also Australia and also major European markets, they are closed for the Good Friday holiday. Now, finally, for me, a story that just shows you how expensive copyright infringement can be. Back in 1997, Sean Diddy Coombs came out with a smash hit that sampled the Police's song Every Breath You Take. But he did that without asking permission. And a copyright deal was then made after the fact, and that was expensive. 26 years later, Diddy has now admitted on Twitter, as we see here, that he pays the Police's lead singer Sting some $5,000 a day. He was actually rectifying an admission that Sting made on a radio talk show, saying that Diddy paid him $2,000 a day. Sting also added that Diddy will be doing that until the end of his days. A nice little additional $1.8 million per year for Sting, who sold his song rights to Universal last year in a deal that is said to be worth some $350 million. But the $5K a day may not be too hard for Diddy to cough up. He's thought to be worth, Sharon, some $700 million.
Drop in the ocean then, Solange, by the sounds of things. Thank you for that. That's Solange Moujon joining us from our business desk.